Good evening. Good evening. How you guys doing tonight? It's Mike back with Soberheadz podcast one day at a time. And I got a special guest on tonight, man. My man Jose, man. Whew. This brother was there from the beginning of my sobriety and was so much an integral part in helping me stay sober, man. What's up, Jose? Thanks for coming on, brother.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course. We got to give back to the community. We got to give back to our brothers in this battle of trying to sustain from a substance or anything in life that you're struggling with. So, of course, man, when you reached out, of course, I'm there.
Man, I want to thank you, man. And like I said, you were an integral part of my recovery from the beginning, man. Just being there when I first arrived at rehab, and it was like we instantly clicked, and then once that happened, it just took off, man. And I want to thank you before we even get started for being there for me, bro. And in more ways than one, than you might even know, man. You the one hooked me up with my sponsor. You know what I'm saying? Through that group with those guys that you hooked me up with that did the back to basic. You know what?
Yeah, I
met
remember
Mike,
that.
man. Yeah.
Yeah,
And Mike took me through the 12 steps, man. You know what I'm saying? So Jose is going to share his experience, strength, and hope with us, how it was, what happened, and how it is now, man. So the stage is yours, Jose.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I appreciate you. And you also played a big part in my recovery as well too. I think about you all the time, and I think about all the brothers and sisters as well too.
Mm-hmm.
When we were back in Florida, even though we're all
Mm-hmm.
in different places now in the world, you're in Jersey. I'm in Massachusetts right now, but it all started from a certain place, and that was Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very truly grateful to be here and appreciate the opportunity to take this time and kind of like just talk about strength, experience, and hope, right? And usually what I like to do every time I get asked to either participate in any type of like a guest speaker or even some type of like inspirational or some type of growth setting of a meeting, I always like to tell folks that listen, my experience is my experience. Everyone has had a different experience. I can't sit here and say that I've been through what you've been through, but I definitely know what the feelings are like. I know what those emotions are like. And that's what brings us together is that we have all in common the emotions that brings us to that point that we need to kind of like do something different in our life, right? That chaos, that despair, that feeling of not feeling good enough. And that's what kind of takes that step forward to help us and unite and that brotherhood and sisterhood to do this on a daily basis as far as the battle between keeping yourself grounded and present. So my sobriety day is January 27, 2019. It doesn't even feel like it's been that long. Time is flying. Time is it's just passing right by us. Um, how much time do we have, Mike, on the meeting as far as like?
Bro, it's up to
Okay,
you. Yeah, it's up to
okay.
you.
So I migrated here when I was 8 years old with my mom, who are in Dominican Republic. It was myself, my younger brother, and my mom, and my dad, who already lived here in the States. He lived in New York. He brought us, and we pretty much made our life here. Um, Anyone who is very kind of like entwined with a cultural type of family like setting knows that sometimes there's a lack of emotional intelligence. There's a lack of like being able to kind of address certain emotions when it comes up, depending on the situation. And that was the space that I was in. My family was loving and being able to provide me a roof, being able to provide me food, and making sure that I was clean to go to school along with my siblings. But when it came to sitting down and talking about emotions, whether if it was love, sad,
Mm.
mad, there wasn't that much of an intelligence there to kind of like share along to us. So growing up, it was a battle in the sense of kind of like going through those emotions and having to figure out how to like really cope with those emotions. And I found myself trying to fill the void of how to like cope with those emotions with folks that I met in a very toxic environment. There
Mm.
are different terms to what people consider that, In my end, it was like living in the projects. In the projects, you have folks that are from all different backgrounds, but not sometimes not the healthiest. But it is what it is. You know, I'm grateful for that experience. I was very big into music from a very early on age. I was very big into music. I played the trumpet for part of my elementary school, and you know, I also played part of the piano as well too. But when I hit 15, I grew a passion to turntables. I don't know what it was, but I grew a passion to turntables, and to this day, I still got my setup. But back then, it was love. It was love that I was able to use to kind of like escape from those emotions that I was having a hard time dealing with. And I was
Mhm.
not able to find that closure or peace within my parents. So DJing introduced me to some type of like an art in me that I didn't even know existed. I met the friends that I mentioned earlier not too long ago that were not so healthy, the toxic friends, you know, suggested that, you know what, let's throw house jams. So I started throwing house jams when I was 15. I would go and use my friends' houses while their parents were away on vacation. And the thought process or scheme around it was like, hey guys, if your parents leave, I'll use your house to throw a house party. I'll give you this much out of the $5. You guys keep $2, I keep $3. And it
Mm.
was like that throughout high school. So I was walking into high school with like a lot of money at an early on in school, and without really knowing the importance of how to manage finances, because it was just something that it was like cool at the time, and it wasn't as bad as, you know, as what the world is today. You know, there wasn't social media, there wasn't cameras, there wasn't any of that. It was just everybody having a good time. So all of high school, that was my quote unquote job. And all of high school, I started drawing more and more individuals into my life that honestly, they were who they were. But if I was to look back, they weren't the healthiest, you know.
Mm.
Um, and I got introduced to alcohol when I was like 18. Remember back then it was Mad Dog 2020,
Mine
Cisco,
too. Mine too.
not night train, you know. It
Yeah.
was it was it was whatever was cheap and accessible and quick. And that was, I was fine with that. I mean, I didn't know what these different lines of alcohol brands were or not. It was just, it was doing the job. But, and it's gonna make sense later once I get to the end of my story, but I'm already introducing something in my life without really knowing how to understand my emotions. And what
Mm.
happens, what happens with alcohol or any of these substances is that sometimes it's considered an antidepressant. And sometimes it maximizes the effect of whatever emotion you have already within yourself.
Mm.
So you know, I didn't know that. I'm 18, I'm living the best life, I'm partying up, I'm finishing high school. I didn't have to go and get a job throughout high school. I was making money doing the things that I love to do, playing music. It was fun. I don't have no regrets. Came into my 18 year, I was 18 at the time. I told my mom, I was like, you know what? You guys are not doing enough for me. I don't feel loved. I don't feel wanted here. I am moving to Florida. This is back in 2007. In 2007, I decided to quote unquote chase my dream and become a famous DJ. So I moved to Orlando. We had a house with a bunch of guys that we kind of linked up, and we decided to do this. And we were out there trying to just chase a dream. Reality is none of that happened. It's not that easy. I was there for like a year. I didn't have a job. I didn't have my license. I was partying even more because most of the other guys were older than me. So I'm getting introduced to Ghost Lager. Now I'm getting introduced to E&J. Now I'm getting introduced to all these different harder kind of alcohol. And I was just like, oh wow, forget Night Train, forget Cisco, forget Mad Dog 2020. This is where it's at. But again, I'm now becoming more and more codependent to this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now in my 20s, I decided to move back from Florida when I was 20. I was 19 turning 20. At that point, I already had a little foundation from the house party when I was doing back in high school. At this point, I decided to go ahead and get into the halls and get into clubs. And I did that.
Mm.
I did that. I worked hard enough, and I was able to make a name out of myself in Massachusetts and travel and work with different artists, throw my own parties, you know, rent out the clubs, and then make some type of an income off of that. But then at that point, I was getting even more and more codependent to the alcohol, because from
Mm.
that point on, I would not touch the turntables that I started out without no influences. It was just a passion. I would not touch the turntables without a drink. So from 20 all the way up to 29, it was always drinking, 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 drinking,
Wow.
drinking, 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 nonstop. And when I hit 29, and again, I mean, I can already tell you what happened between 20 to 29. I got into car accidents under the influence of alcohol. Got nothing happened. God, thank you, Lord. I've gotten into some bad fights under the influence of alcohol with family and friends. Lost a lot of friendships. Didn't know until I was 29 when I decided to want to get into a relationship that I had lack of emotional intelligence, because when I decided to want to get into a relationship at 29, so from 20 to 29, I was just a bachelor. I wasn't taking anybody serious. But when I was 29, I started to see all my friends and family have their houses, have careers, have family, have kids. I was like, you know what? This ain't. I have an empty feeling inside me. I have something that's not being filled. Like I feel empty. I like that type of emotional connection with my family, and now I'm lacking within myself with someone who I can share that with, because it's definitely
Mm.
not somebody who you meet the same night at a setting like a club when you're under the influence of alcohol. It just doesn't happen like that. And if it
Mm.
does, kudos to you, but it wasn't my story. But at 29, I decided to want to get in a relationship. I got into a relationship with someone who was in a abusive relationship prior from me joining their family, who had a kid who was abused. And this is where I really started to realize how big the problem was as
Mm.
far as being an alcoholic. She mentioned to me, I don't want you to be a family man, and I don't want you to be in the party scene. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give up the party scene and be that family man and take care of you and your son. Codependency. I can't take care of anybody if I can't take care of myself. That was the
Mm.
first red flag. But I didn't realize that. I learned that down
Mm.
the road through therapy and meetings and having conversations like with Mike and other brothers and sisters talking about our past experiences. But at that moment, it felt good. I was feeling a void. What happened is that when someone is in a setting that they're still healing, and you walk into that healing phase or stage, you're gonna get the effects of them not being completely healed. And that's
Mm.
exactly what happened. So when I
Mm.
was with this individual, whenever she would get mad, whether we were having an argument or whatever the case is, because she was still healing from her past relationship, she will hurt me. The worst way that any man can be attacked is with their emotions. A man's emotions are a weakness. That's why some of us are either not really expressive, or some of us have emotional intelligence that can be expressive. I wasn't that man that was there at that point. So knowing that she knew that I didn't have the emotional intelligence of understanding how to be mad, sad, or whatever, or not feeling good enough, she hit me where it hurt. And it kept on for 3 years. What happened was that whenever I had that feeling, like I felt not worthy, like I felt, you know, just not good enough, the way I would cope is by alcohol. So even though I wasn't DJing or doing any of that because I was trying to be that family man, the only thing I knew how to cope with something like that or anything that involves my emotions was alcohol. And that's when things started to get worse. I fell in love with this person. She she emotionally broke me. And I didn't know what that meant. To be emotionally broken is where you're willing to take your life because you don't have that defense to understand how to emotionally defend yourself. And when you're drinking, that feeling is increased times 20. And that's why it doesn't match with someone who's depressed. If you're depressed and you're drinking, that's a very, very dangerous place to be, you know? So there were times where I try to commit suicide um, under the influence of alcohol and antidepressant medications. There were times that, I will disappear for a few days. I would disconnect from family. My parents were super worried. I would disconnect from friends, from my actual job. At the time, I worked for Comcast, and I was just not going to work. Um, I wasn't going to the gym. I wasn't eating. I wasn't doing anything. I just felt like life was pointless at that point. And there was this one day, I remember this day like if it was yesterday. We had gotten into an argument, and of course, my way to cope with it was with alcohol. And I went and bought a sleeve of Jim Beam Black. So anybody who knows what Jim Beam is like, is like, it's dirt. It's cheap, but it's dirt. It's dirt or whiskey. You know what I'm saying? Like it's gonna hit you. And a sleeve, ugh. So it's like 8:30 in the morning. I went and dropped off her son at school, and I went and got, and I'm over here just drinking from the night before. We were just having an argument, and I started having this sharp, sharp pain. I've never had this pain in my life. I was like, yo, what's going on? And I thought it was just maybe something I ate or whatever the case is. The day kept on. I was already home. We were having dinner. We was already at home. The kid was there. She was there. And I still kept having this pain. It was this pain like I'm getting stabbed in the back. Like I couldn't breathe. And I couldn't have a bowel movement for that day.
Mm.
And I wasn't even able to like swallow anything. My eyes were becoming yellow from over drinking. So it was already 3 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep. I asked her, hey, can you take me to the hospital? But of course, she's in her feelings. She didn't want to take me. So I drove myself on the plane and everything to the hospital. And that's when I found out that God has said enough is enough. I'm not religious. I'm spiritual, and I believe in something greater than me.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever it was that day, back when I was 29, said, we're going to change all this. We're going to put you on the right path. I was diagnosed with pancreatitis at 29. I was like, what the hell is pancreatitis? The doctor's like, listen, you keep drinking, you're going to kill yourself. And I was like, what do you mean? I got uncles that are in their 70s and 60s drinking hardcore. Why me? Why me? What's going on? It's like, listen, you drank to the point where your pancreas is so irritated that this is the effects. And you're lucky that your liver, you're not having liver failure because your enzymes are super high. So your enzymes are what kind of tells the levels of your liver, like whether they're high or not. So if they're super high, that's a problem because you can have liver failure. The good thing about it is that these are organs that regenerate over time. They recover, they heal. We had the only way that you can kind of get back from having that effect where you can kind of like not have the pain and from the pancreas and everything, they need to give you morphine. So I was being given morphine through IV, and I didn't really know what morphine was at the time, but I was being given morphine, and they had to dehydrate me and give me fluids and all that. I go back home, I get cleared. I'm upset because she wasn't there with me this whole time. We had another fight, and she was very, very aggressive and physical. And at that point, I said, enough is enough. I need to break up with you because this is not healthy for me. I can't help you because you need to help yourself, and you need to be there for you and your son. And I made a selfless decision at that point. I decided to focus on me because I knew what was going on in my life is more serious than anything else. Because if I'm done, if my life is over, nothing else matters. You know what I mean? So I decided to move out. She didn't believe it. I moved back to my mom's house. I opened up to my parents. I told her what I was struggling with. I told them that, you know what, I've come to the conclusion that I am an alcoholic. I can't cope with anything without having a drink, and I
Mm.
can't just not have a regular day without having a drink. My parents were just mind blown because they kind of had an idea, but they never thought, because they didn't raise me to be that way. They raised me within their limits, what they knew based on how they were raised, but it was just something completely new to them. You know, they thought it was more behavioral than anything. But I'm like, no, I'm an alcoholic. I can't do anything without having a drink. I wake
Mm.
up in the morning at 8:30 in the morning, I need to have a drink.
Yep.
At 12, I need to have a drink.
Yep.
Before I go and do anything at night, before I take a shower, I had to have a drink. I had to have a drink right next to my bed before I went to sleep. You know,
Mm.
so I was an alcoholic. So I told them, I was like, I'm gonna go and sign up and go into a detox, and that's where I got admitted to one of the Delphi facilities. At this point, it was Serenity at Summit, and that's where I did my detox program. It was in Haverhill, Mass. And in there, I met a lot of great people. I understood what codependency is. I understood that I was in a very codependent relationship, that in the end of the day, you can't fix anybody. You can't be their savior because they were in an abusive relationship. You got to make sure that you are you, and they are who they are. The difference between need and want is that you shouldn't need anything. You may want something, but that shouldn't not have an effect on you emotionally, spiritually, and physically. But it did. It did. And I didn't understand what codependency meant at that time. So when I was there at the program, they were like, you know, you seem like you're very invested into this. You should go and proceed to further care. So I decided to go into the PHP program, and that's where I ended up in Ocean Breeze in Fort Lauderdale. And
Wow.
I decided to take that leap of hope. I didn't know what I was walking into. I was just like, you know what? I have nothing here. I already messed up my reputation because I'm not doing what I love to do. I messed up with my job, relationships, my family. It's right now having all these different thoughts about me. So why not go somewhere where I can start over and just sacrifice people, places, and things without having that effect on me? And that's exactly what I did. I just trusted the process. So when I went to Ocean Breeze was weird because Ocean Breeze every week they will have like some group of people coming in and out, and every week
Mhm.
you'll have people finishing the program going out to the
Mhm.
community. So when I was in Ocean Breeze, I met Mike, and one of the things that me and Mike always clicked on, it was that, so I'm the type of individual, and this was back from like my teens. If I'm eating, everybody's eating.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
that's just the way that I've always been. Mike knows me very well. Like I was raised in a very in a very like remote area, like in Dominican Republic in the countryside. You eat what you can, and whatever you have you give to your neighbors. You know, like if we have enough food for everybody in the same block, everybody's eating. So I was always raised that even if it's a loaf of bread, cut that loaf of bread into fours, each little slice, so everybody can eat. That's just the way I was raised. That's how my mom, that's why I mentioned to you that my mom showed me love by always making sure we had food
Mhm.
and we had a roof over us. And
Mhm.
that's always been implanted into me. So when I was in Ocean Breeze and I met Mike, I got approved for food snaps, of course. You know, I was on a medical leave. I was on unemployment. So I had extra income that honestly, you know, I wasn't really doing much because I was just there in the program. It's not like we could have done a lot of outside stuff. We was in a program, and individuals that were in that same program with us, unfortunately, didn't have access to certain things like we did.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, so one of the things that I started to kind of like build as a tradition that was passed on to me from the previous guys that were there when I first got to Ocean Breeze in Florida. So this is PHP. PHP is like a residential program, if no one knows. It's a residential program, and that's the next level of care from when you leave detox. So PHP can range between 30 days to 45 days. So he was in the PHP program. Is a male side and there's a female side, and it's a community. And what it means is that you're there following groups. So you have a syllabus throughout the day. You do about maybe 4 to 5, 6 different groups. you have a lunch, you have, and then you kind of like do your own thing at night for dinner, because they allow us to do groceries and stuff like that. So what I noticed is that a lot of individuals didn't have access to food, and there's always been something inside me, like that human element, where I always want to help out anybody who's in need, because I know what it feels like to come from nothing. That humility in me, it's always been there. I will go to Costco's, or I will go to Publix, and we will buy racks of ribs or wraps of chicken and all this other stuff. And I think it was like either every Thursday, every Saturday, every Sunday, we'll just cook. We'll just cook. And everybody's eating. Everybody's eating. Everybody's eating. And I kept doing that as a way to give back. And this is what the program taught me, right? And I wanted to share, like, the program is meant, from a regular person's perspective, it's meant to make you a better person. It's meant to make you humane, right? Because it's all about the principles. And I actually have the principles here. So the principles, if you don't know, is honesty, hope, action, courage, integrity, willingness, brotherly love, discipline, perseverance, spiritual awareness, and service. So, like, I didn't know that by me giving back the way I was, by just giving a plate of food to someone who didn't have access to food, was already part of the principles. I didn't know that. So, going forward, like, I was already reaching my, I would say, 25th day. I was almost done with the program. I had a sponsor. His name was Casey. Casey at the time, he was a big chef. He would travel with the cruise ships, and he would make these dishes. He was just an amazing individual, from where he was, from his breaking point, his spiritual awakening, to what he was already becoming. But I didn't understand that. But he taught me that. And he had a brotherhood that he introduced me to. And when I was already like chopping it up with Mike and becoming very good friends with him, because me and Mike would sit down for hours and just talk. We would just talk. There wasn't anything to do. So we would just talk. We would just talk for hours. We would just talk. We would eat, and we would talk about different things. I mean, there was gossiping. Of course, it was going to be gossiping. It was like the Real World. I don't know if you ever watched MTV Real World. It was literally like that, but with principles and people trying to do the right thing. And whoever wasn't really trying to do the right thing, unfortunately, life always has a way to just showing up and kind of putting you a different direction and then redirect you. But other than that, me, Mike, and there was a few other guys, we would just always chop it up and just talk for hours by the pool. And at that point, I mentioned to Mike, I'm like, Mike, my sponsor has a great brotherhood, like, of guys. Like, these guys have some strong recovery. Would you like to join? And they can help you go through the steps. And this wasn't the first time Mike has been in a program. Like, this was his second time. The first time, things were different. But this time he and I were put in each other's roles, and this time it seems that things did work out a little differently, in a good way for him. Not that the last time wasn't a good way or anything was bad about it, but this time it was a little different. He had a good surroundings. He helped me because he kept me accountable. In the end of the day, I have respect for him. He's my elder. And in the end of the day, he's a father figure, and he's a brother. He's the older brother. So in the end of the day, the respect is always going to be there. And I always give my respect to my elders. So he will give me his advice, is like, Jose, this ain't the first time I've gone through this. Like this, and I would hear him out. It's like, well, I don't want to go through this. I don't want to go through this cycle. If I'm going through this now and I'm doing all this sacrifice, this is now, not me going all over and doing it. No, I can't do that. Because as you notice how I said my sobriety date is back in 2019. You imagine having to go through 4 more years of my life? That will make me, I'm 35 right now. I'll be close to 40 still going through that. I can't put myself through that. So again, we became good friends. He got a sponsor. We will do outside meetings. We both finished the program. And the sad part about it, and condolences, and they're definitely in our memories. A lot of the people that were in there with us are not here with us today.
They died.
And it's truly sad. And I'm talking about individuals that were only 18, 17, at the time, very young. You know, I was already in my 30s, and you know, Mike, you know, he is who he was at the time. But these are folks that I haven't even began their life, passed away due to substances or just that one high or that one drink, whatever. So, you know, after we finished the program, we definitely stay in touch. Mike did end up going back out to Jersey. He had responsibilities that he had to come back to. I decided to stay in Florida because I was like, my sponsor told me very clearly, you know, if you go back to Massachusetts right now, nothing has changed. You have changed. You're going back to the same thing that you left when you were there last time. So if you're not ready to go back to that and you don't feel strong enough, stay here, build a life. And that's exactly what I did. And after I was done with the PHP and IOP, I ended up building a sober living, like a community. And I was living in a halfway house, man. And I would talk to Mike all the time. Mike would be in Jersey, and he will actually come down and see me. Like, I really appreciated that. I remember that he did that 3 times. He flew down from Jersey. He was down there with family as well too, but he would take time to kind of like, yo, Jose, I'm gonna go see you at the community of the sober living you're staying at. He'll pick me up, and we would just, you know, kind of hang out and talk and catch up. And that was really nice because I was having a really hard time in that and those type of environment. You know, it's different. You know, you got people in there that come in there with recovery, and you got people that just have like a day. And you know, to be around that, already introduced to recovery and understanding what recovery is, it was hard because you have to stay very disciplined. And again, I met good people in those programs and the sober living homes as well, but I lost many too. Fast forward, I got introduced because of my sponsor to a gentleman who said, you know what, you're doing the job, you're giving back to the community, you're doing the 12 principles of the steps. You have knowledge around drop the rock, around the 4 agreements, you know, the daily reflections, you know, you just a sponsor. If you wanted to, you're a mentor. Why don't you come and work at a treatment center with us? It's not going to be something intense, but it's going to be something that you can at least give back to those in the program and maybe potentially help them stay there and not, you know, leave. AMA, against medical advice, if that's what that means, against medical advice, AMA. And that's exactly what it was. I was a tech. I started working at my first treatment center. I was doing the 3rd shift. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. That was intense. 3rd shift at a dual male and female sober living. Oh my God, that was intense. Mind you, I would stay away from the female side because you just never know. But luckily I had cameras, and I would always knock on the door like, yo, you guys are good? All right, cool. I'm outside if you guys need anything. But it was intense. And the boys, that was also intense as well too. I did that for about 6-7 months. And I remember my boss was like, I want you to work in the clinical building. And then I got promoted from 3rd shift, now working 1st shift at the clinical building. And from that point, I'm going to speed through the next few months. I got introduced to an owner who owns multiple sober homes. And he said, I love your strength. I love how consistent you've been. At this point, I was already like about 2 years. I was already, about to be 2 years, no, 3 years in my sobriety. And he was like, I want you to run my all men sober house. And I want you to also work as a lead, as one of my my techs, as a lead in the clinical building. So it's so crazy because, again, going back to how it started, I got diagnosed with pancreatitis. And I took that at that point when I was already at 3 years clean with all the different things that were just coming up in my life as, you know what, God was preparing me for this. I didn't know this was all going to happen. It's not like you have a playbook and you can go down the road in the future and say, yeah, okay, I see this is going to happen 3 years from now. I might as well get ready for that. All right, let me do some push-ups. Let me get ready for that. It's coming. No, I didn't expect any of that to happen. I didn't expect to meet Mike. I didn't expect to be in Florida. I didn't expect any of that. I went to school. When I went to high school, it was a trade school for computer science for like IT. Now I'm in like a mental health type of environment, and I love it.
I
I had a
know.
passion for it.
No.
I love it.
No.
I loved it. Mike, I would I would just spend hours and hours and hours and give back and give back and give back, and without expecting anything in return, without any hidden agendas. I would just want to see people generally good. So I started to realize that this has been something inside me this whole time. And it's being there for people, it's helping individuals. Because in the big book, it says, once you already establish that moment when you have long term sobriety and you're kind of battling to keep in your sobriety and protecting it, give it back. Share your experiences, strengths, and hope to the next person that might be in the space that might need to hear that. Out of a room of 100 people, you might be able to save at least one or two or three. Who knows? But it's something that was given to us to give back to the community. Long story short, now we're going a little bit more further up. I have made a name of myself in the sober community in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale. I had already made my name in working in treatment centers. I was managing a halfway house. I had two jobs. So from losing everything, I had two jobs. I had bought my car that I lost. I had already a savings. I was able to buy groceries. I was able to do so much that I wasn't able to do back then without drinking alcohol, without even the thought of drinking alcohol. October of reaching my third year, around there, I got a call that my dad he had a stroke. So things got hard at that point. You know, I didn't really know how to like process that. But one of the things that my sponsor always taught me is prayer. I pray every night. I pray every morning. I pray every day. There's not a day that I don't go without praying. I've been praying for 5 years straight since I've been in this program. It's my level of prayer, though. It's not like whatever they want to push you when you go into a church. If you're a Christian, if you're, Catholic, nothing against any of the religions. It's just my relationship with my God involves with me praying in the morning before I even touch a device, and then praying at night before I even go to sleep and close my eyes. So like at this point, I prayed. I was like, what is this new chapter what is it gonna bring? My mom started to become very severely depressed. My siblings were not emotionally equipped to deal with the level of stress that was going on with my parents. The stroke left my dad without knowing who who we are, because he's still present. God bless his soul. He's still with us. So he has a very short-term memory. It goes in and out. His whole right side is not mobile. He's lost a lot of weight. And he's medical has he's bedbound at this point, so he's mostly always in the bed. So we started to hit a crisis within my family, and that's when I knew I had to move back to Massachusetts. But again, this is where I knew God had a plan for me. If I was still drinking 3 years ago, before that, I wasn't ready or equipped to go back to Massachusetts and deal with that level of stress. Hell no. Hell no. But I did. And I already knew I was coming back to the same people doing the same shit. I already knew that I was coming back to things that were out of my control, that had nothing to do with how I feel, and it shouldn't affect me how I feel. I already knew what I was coming back to. I was already equipped for that. And when I came back here, I already had a resume of working in the mental health field that allowed me to tap into another treatment center here in Massachusetts. And that's exactly what happened. I ended up going back to work to the same place that actually took me in and admitted me. So I ended up getting a job for Delphi, the same facility that was housing me and Mike. I went back to the same program with sobriety on my belt, and I was like, listen, this is where I am right now. I'm here because of family. I need a job. This is my resume. I worked at this treatment center and all that. I've been giving back to the community. I want to continue to do the work. Would you be willing to give me a job? I don't have the credentials, but I know the job, and I have the experience with my sobriety. They hired me. The same place that I did my detox, hired me, and that was huge. From that point on, sky's the limit. I was able to provide back to my family. To this day, I'm still providing back. I've been able to financially help them, make sure that they're not missing anything without their food, without anything that has to do with rent, any medical gaps. Everything's being taken care of. From working at that place, I currently have a job working for the state. I work for the state and I focus on patients that have schizophrenia or very high mental health diagnosis. They are like, going through psychosis, bridge with substance abuse. And I'm in school right now, finishing my bachelor's degrees in human services and then pursuing my master's in social work so I can have my LCSW for the state. I help people on a daily basis that are struggling, not just with the substance abuse, but also the core roots that sometimes leads to them to use the substance abuse. Because what happens is that there was a point, you're not born an addict. I mean, I'm gonna tell you something. You're not born an addict. There is certain parts within you and your life that there wasn't enough education around the emotional part of it. And with that, by not understanding how to deal with the emotional part of it, you went to something that gave you that relief, that sense of peace. And that's when the cycle starts. So me, not just recovery based, sobriety based, but also learning the medical side of it, the therapeutic approach, the practices around that, knowing both of them. If you're capable of sitting with someone, like, for example, with Mike, and say, Mike, let's take it back 20 years from now. How was it with your family? Did you guys eat together? Did you guys talk about your day? Were you able to talk about your emotions? Okay, how old were you? If you're capable of going that back, you can at least start to understand when the cycle started and then help the person kind of find closure from that. Everybody has their way to kind of like really go through how to figure that out. But if you're willing and you have the willingness, there's a way that you can find that inner peace and find that closure with that and live peaceful. Today, not too long ago, 6 months ago, I lost about 4 family members.
Sorry to hear that, bro.
Thank you. I prayed and I kept working and I kept giving back. I had a surgery for a hernia, told the doctor, don't want no painkillers. Yo, you sure you're about to have an opening? I'll take Tylenol. That's exactly what I did. There are times, there are different things, breakups, relationships. I actually can stay away from red flags now from relationships if they're toxic, depending what it is. I'm at peace with being by myself. I don't mind being alone. I don't feel lonely. I've learned things like I learned how to be in peace with cooking a meal or watching a comedy or reading a book or exercising. I'm at peace. I got my own place. It wasn't like that before. It wasn't like that. I thought I lost it all. I have so much, but it doesn't matter because all this can be taken away. But even if it's taken away, I still have my serenity.
Indeed.
I still got my prayers. I still got my peace of mind. None of this will break me. None of this. It doesn't matter. Because in the end of the day, it doesn't have a hold on me. In the end of the day, I'm going to still do the work, stay grounded, stay present, pray, give back. And it's one of my sponsor told me this. Your recovery is invites only. What that means that not everybody's welcome into your bubble of recovery. You gotta protect that. You gotta protect it because it's sacred. Not everybody can reach the amount of time that you have accomplished and continue to accomplish. It doesn't mean that they can't do it, but you gotta protect it. And that's very valuable in today's world. Not many people can do that. I'm not saying that it's not reachable. Again, there are many that have done it, but those who have done it have tried to practice a certain way of life to maintain it. And that's that battle of keeping long-term sobriety. That's my story. This is Jose. And Mike, thanks again, man. I mean, I didn't really go into the detail, but what I really wanted to kind of like give as a message in this is that it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what you have and what you don't have. When you lack something within yourself and when you are faced in a situation that emotionally disrupts you and you don't know how to deal with it, that's dangerous. And that's when you really need to kind of learn how to deal with those emotions before it becomes a little bit more dangerous within your life down the road as a cycle. But once you're able to understand how to be happy, sad, how to be nervous, how to be anxious, and it doesn't disrupt you, but then also learning the coping skills to how to like ground you, life is always going to happen. But when it does happen, you're capable of handling it better and healthier. And that's the difference with those who are in recovery and have managed to kind of like have long-term sobriety. We call them the normies. The normies, they live a lifestyle that doesn't make it any different than us, but the normies sometimes are not very present when it comes to, you know, mindfulness, being selfless, self-awareness, you know, being okay to not do anything. Majority of the folks today, if there's nothing going on at home, I'm bored. I need to go party. I need to go do this. For the first time in my life, I've learned how to have the discipline, not just with my sobriety, but apply that to a lot of other things. Social media, I don't use social media. Mike knows that. I don't use social media. I'm so grateful that I'm disconnected from that. Nothing against it. It's just not for me. I'm at peace, and I feel God had this already planned for me for what was coming down the road between my parents' health, the losses in my family, the surgeries, the car accidents, the breakups. It got me prepared for all that. I'm 35 years old and I'm living my best life right now sober.
Indeed, brother. And I want to touch on a couple of things that you talked about, man. And the one thing was codependency, and I learned that being in Ocean Breeze. It was the Spanish lady that was my counselor. I forget her name, but she was so dope, but she was direct. And one of the first things she told me after she assessed me, and we had a couple of groups, and me and her had a one-on-one one day, and she said, "You know what one of your problems is? You're extreme codependent." She was like, "You don't just because you don't have to be the one to pay the bill when you and your friends go out. They still gonna love you. You don't have to do that, and you don't have to be the one to always reach out and call them all the time. You don't have to carry the relationships. You don't have to do that. You know what I mean?" And she made me understand it was from what you talked about earlier, not feeling good enough and being insecure. So now I'm gonna try to buy these people to be around me, and then when I don't get that loyalty, now my feelings hurt. You get what I'm saying? Now my feelings hurt because I didn't did this and did that, and she helped me understand that it was that I was codependent. One exercise she told me to do that really let me see it. She was like, when you go home, don't call, only talk to your immediate people. Like the other people that you used to call all the time. She said, don't call nobody for 6 weeks and see who calls you. Then she said, then now go look at your phone log and you will notice that when you was talking to them, you was the person always calling them. So then I understood what relationships I was carrying. You get what I'm saying? So then, and then another thing you touched on was the trauma, and where I got to the bottom of it down there doing MDR, whatever. When you pull the things and they take you back to the trauma thing.
EMDR.
Yeah, that was important for me. It helped clear up what I saw when I saw my wife at the scene and all of that stuff. And another thing was when I worked with Mike, because a lot of my drinking was I couldn't understand why I didn't love my first wife like she loved me. I didn't understand why. So I was drinking under that, and I was feeling guilty and stuff like that. I felt like if I was better, if I knew how to do that, then she would none of that stuff would have happened. So when I did the steps with Mike and working with my therapist down there, we got to the point on that step 4 when we looked at it. and everything traced to my childhood, and it was to the point to where my mom was raising me as a single mom, so she was super duper strict. Anybody know my mom know how she is. So it wasn't though that affection and loves and kisses that you was talking about. And my father wasn't there, so I didn't have a chance to be able to experience that kind of affection and learn how to give it. So I say that to say, if I never did that work down there, I probably would have been still drinking, punishing myself because I didn't know what the core of the issue was.
Right. Yep.
You get what I'm saying? And that was a breaking point for me to take all that guilt, shame, and remorse up off of me, understanding that I never had a shot. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't my fault. But those were the two things I saw. And how do you deal with people, places, and things now?
I mean, so, you know, with doing the work, with doing the practicing within yourself, mentally, spiritually, physically, and you're praying, and you know, like, I don't know, I'm like, you know, like at first we do like, I don't know how many meetings I think we do, like, you lose count of how many meetings. You kind of like start building this memory, this muscle memory within your brain and how your body language is. I mean, before we even reach the point to go to Publix, remember that we were already kind of like prepping ourselves, but there was alcohol around us all the time, you know? So it's like we were around alcohol all the time when we were down there. So when we came back, I was respectful. I didn't play with it. I didn't test it. I wasn't being disrespectful to the program because I know that in the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much time I have. I'm not fixed. It can happen at any given point. But I continue to just kind of like be easy and gentle with me as I transition back home. And what that means is that I didn't communicate with any of the friends that I had back then. I didn't go to places that will bring back memories of what I was doing for partying or any connection that I had in the past. And I wasn't doing any of the things that was kind of like triggering me to drink. I would just I would go to school, and I'm still in school. I would go to the gym, and I would just kind of like spend time with family, talk to my parents. I have the best relationship with my mom now. I talk to her. I'm very vulnerable. I'm very expressive with her, and I tell her, like, you know, how I feel. And we have a very normal conversation. I actually found out that my mom has a lot of PTSD and trauma. I found this out now. So now it's, you know, it makes a lot of sense. Again, it goes back to our parents only know what they were taught and what they were raised into, you know. So with that being said, and because of the level of respect that I got for the program, I just didn't mess with it. Today, it's been 3 years now, as of this past January, me being back in Massachusetts. I go out, have no problem. When I need to leave, I leave. If I'm dating somebody, like relationships, or if I'm hanging out, I drive my own car. If I have to go, I go. I'm all set. I already, you know, I give myself my limits. I set my boundaries. If I don't do gatherings where people are getting intoxicated, but nor do I have a circle of friends today that's what they do. You know, my circle of friends are professionals, not taking away from anybody, but these are folks that are either getting the doctorates, they're police officers, fire department, medical, like they're people that are doing something with their life and also have that self-control where they're not binge drinking. So I feel safe to be around them. But even at that point, they're human beings, and still like anyone else, we have our flaws. I still give myself like an hour and a half where I might go and leave. I think that today was really helping me just remind myself where I came from. Is the amount of sick people that I see on a daily basis in my job. You know, COVID did something to this world, and what it did, it made the awareness so much more bigger than what it was before around mental health. The moment COVID struck, then people had to kind of like really be, you know, sheltered and stay inside. The amount of alcohol went up. The amount of drugs went up. The amount of suicides went up. You know, For folks like us that already have gone through the training and the proper spiritual awakening and spiritual practices, we're okay with just being sheltered. It is what it is. Like, we know what that's like. But a lot of people don't know what that's like. And when they're put in that situation, they find a way to kind of numb themselves or whatever. So seeing what the effects from that, now that COVID has been lifted and folks are coming back to the real world, it's truly sad. You know, the amount of mental health episodes. If you look at the news, you have so many professionals. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be a cop, a nurse, a regular guy. There are people that are either under the influence of drugs, committing like very crazy, eventful events that have gone down through history, whether if it's murdering their families, whether if it's suicides, whatever the case, it's just intense. And I think of that, and it reminds me that I'm no different, and I have to continue to do the work, because I can be in that same space if at the moment that I just don't give myself the teaching that I've been applying to myself for the past 5 years today. So I live a very private life, and I'm okay with that. But I'm at peace. I have a roof over me. My parents have a roof over them. I got food. I have a career. I'm gonna, I got my school. I go to the gym. I have a set routine, but I don't have toxic relationships. I don't have any ongoing warrants or arrests. I'm not sick. I'm at peace, and I protect that. If someone was to call me today and say, "Yo, listen, let's come to a club tonight. Let's party." No, I'm good. That's not my scene.
That's so much of one thing I could say about you, from like, you were so focused being that age. Like at 30, I was just still immature and wild. You get what I'm saying? Like I didn't have that focus, like, to be, because I remember you down there, like you went from doing the meetings on the at the facility we were staying at. You was leading the meetings, and your meetings was popping. And then
I forgot about that.
Then you get to being in charge of the whole thing on that council, which I was mad because I wanted to be on the council thing. But you went from the meetings to doing that. Then you left, and you got down with that other group. And I started leaving, meeting you, going to the meetings over there. And I'm like, at that age, the Most High bless you to be very, very focused on what you wanted to do. That was a blessing, bro. Like at that age, I was still, because you said something else that was key. Like what a lot of people don't understand is that when you lose that emotional intelligence that you talk about, they say when you first pick up and you get addicted, your emotion intelligence stops at that age. So once I got addicted in college, I was 30 and even 40 years old, still acting like I acted when I was in college, because I never grew up emotionally. That big gap was there because of the alcoholism. You get what I'm saying? So I had a lot of experiences, but when it came to wanting to deal with emotions, making a lot of mature decisions, all that kind of stuff, I shied away from that because I was still acting like I was a teenager. You know what I mean? And that comes from the alcoholism and stuff. You know what I mean? So I saw your growth, and you inspired me to be like, yo, this dude really wants it, man. And like you said too, we lost a lot of soldiers, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember some of them, and it was like, wow. You know what I mean? And this has just been a joy, bro. And I want to thank you so much for coming on, man. And to see how you talking and you flowing up there. I want to come up there and check out Delphi or something like that, and send me a list of where they got Delphi's at, man. Different spots, man.
So Delphi. So right now I work through Tufts.
Okay.
So Tufts is the organization that I'm currently working through.
Okay.
Okay. They're contracted with Mass Health here in Massachusetts, which is like similar to Medicaid.
Okay.
And then the organization that I'm under the umbrella is called City Block Health, and they're out of Brooklyn. They originally out of Brooklyn.
Okay.
And the department that I am part of is called the Advanced Behavioral Health Department. and I run my own county, so I'm in charge of the Middlesex County, and I have a caseload of about 40 individuals that are high psychotic, bridged with substance abuse. So they're both. But you're more than welcome to come out here, dude. We can meet up in Boston.
Oh yeah, indeed. We're gonna definitely link up. In closing, right now, if you was face to face with a newcomer that's struggling at this moment, what would you say to him?
Honestly, I was just asking how's their day, like what's going through their mind. Sometimes you don't have to overwhelm everybody with the whole bunch of stuff with the program. Just sit down and have a conversation with the person. Like, hey, listen, do you want to just talk? What's going through your mind? Like, what are you battling with today? I'm here to listen. I'm not here to judge you. I'm no different than you. But I just want to give you that space so you can talk about whatever's going through your mind or whatever you're going through.
My last question, and I promise, when did you develop the patience to be able to handle when it's people close to you that you wanted to help and they just won't, and it just doesn't click?
I mean, I think it started when we were at Ocean Breeze. There were people that were doing things that was out of our control, Mike. We couldn't, and I was having a hard time dealing with that. But I would talk to, we would all talk about it, and it was like, there's nothing we can do. They left, they relapsed, they died. Like, it's just part of our environment. It's part of what sobriety is all about. You're gonna have people here, but you're not gonna have everybody here that you started out with. And I didn't really understand that until now. And looking back, Mike, we've lost a lot of people and we couldn't save a lot of people, but that's out of our control.
Indeed.
All I know is that I try to be, we try to be the best influence or role model, not just for them, but for ourselves as well too.
Indeed.
I know within my conscience, I know that I try my best to at least give some type of hope, talk about whatever I can to try to impact that person's life in any shape or form that I could have.
Indeed, brother. And that's a great way to end it, man. It was great having you on, man. I give you a call later. As soon as this over, I'm gonna send you the YouTube version, and then I'm gonna send the whole thing to my app, and they're gonna send me the highlights, and I'm gonna start tagging you in the highlights from this interview, bro. I appreciate everything, man.
I appreciate you, Mike. Whatever you need, brother, just hit me up. I know that we haven't really linked up, but 2024 consists of rebuilding relationships in a different shape or form. So, hopefully we can do that, you and I, and I'm super proud of you, bro. Just know that, man.
All praises to the Most High, brother, man. Thanks, Jose, for coming on, brother.
Of course, brother. Have a good night. Bye, everyone.
Bye. That's my guy, man. Fool. When I tell you, this brother used to tell me, just go to the store and get and you got the money to buy. Here, I got take your money, go to the store, get what you want, and I cook whatever you bring back. He just was my chef when I got down there, man. He helped me down, man. Good young brother, man. Had me right down there in Ocean Breeze, man. Showed that love, and it's something about when you in rehab with people and y'all going through the struggle together that you become tight, and it's like a unity that goes on for a lifetime. I got some other brothers that I know from down there that I'm gonna be bringing on also. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Tune in next week on Wednesday. Supposed to have St. Pat's, the former St. Pat's and Mount Verde top assistant Ray Miller checking in. He's currently in scout for the Orlando Magic. So we're gonna go down to the St. Pat's memory lane, the Mount Verde memory lane, and he gonna let us know what it takes to really be a pro basketball player. So tune in for In the Spotlight podcast next Wednesday. This is Mike. I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Shalom.